environment than 3D, because after a 3D environment you're like, fuck, I just want to find this thing already, right? In 2D you find it, you're like, oh, it was right there the whole time.
You might message out to turn off his damn turning off my radio.
They had some problems.
I'm sitting in the front.
But it was even decent.
To its credit, again,
it's like, I don't know, but it's like when I was trying to go through Pan's Forest, I was like, where the hell is that glyph?
Oh, I missed that one all the time. Yeah.
I was like, I had to dig around the corners.
Well, that's my biggest problem with the camera. The camera itself is kind of decent, but you can't control it. And in God of War, the right stick rolled, so there was a reason God of War you can't control the camera. But in Lords of Shadow, the right stick does nothing, right? They could totally make it a little bit of adjustment left and right to see, but I don't know why they
3D games, personally I think 3D games should have a camera view thing like Oblivion, right? I'm totally addicted to Oblivion, and if it didn't have a camera thing, and if it was more set, like camera angles behind you all the time, I would not play it. It would not be as fun.
There are some really good things that you can steal from other companies for how to do platforming plus fighting in 3D. There are games that have mixed that well. Not a lot, but there are some.
Yeah. Personally, I think one of the things that killed the franchise, that it's killing the franchise on more of a personal level as a 2D fan, is the 3D games, because they're so, as I said, not Castlevania.
So true.
Yeah,
it's,
you know?
Unfortunately, the industry wants to go 3D. The only hope now is, maybe we'll actually get a high-quality cell phone Castlevania, because that's where the industry seems to be going.
You don't want to play Puzzle of the Night?
The cell phone games never come
I said high quality. Yeah.
Cell phone games, we're not getting. You were going to say?
No, Frank has a question.
Well, I think, they can keep on making 3D Castlevania games as much as they want, but then there was Castlevania Rebirth for the Virtual Console.
Right, for WiiWare.
That was, I personally found it to be really good and really challenging on the harder difficulties.
Yeah, right.
And what is Castlevania Rebirth? I don't have a Wii.
It's a miniature.
It's a kind of remake of Castlevania The Adventure with Christopher Belmont.
Okay.
But it's kind of like a remake in the sense that it just kind of uses him as the character.
It harkens back to the arcade style that you saw on the NES era.
Yes, okay. Alright, I get that.
Had a graphical upgrade. I found it similar to like Castlevania Bloodlines, the style graphics.
Yeah,
the music felt like that too, definitely.
I grew up playing Castlevania 1 and 2 over and over again, It was one of my first video games at the age of 4. And it's just like embedded in my mind, the 2D scrollers.
Yeah.
So the 3D, it's so different. It's like, yeah, we're having, I'm sorry to reference Mega Man again, but because they are very similar in some ways. The Mega Man 3D games, they had X and stuff, but more like Mega Man Legends, they didn't make a new one for years and stuff. But Castlevania, it seems to get more and more popular. But as a hardcore fan, it just kind of feels like they're moving so far away from what it used to be. And yeah, change is good and everything, but it feels like it's kind of sullying the franchise a little bit, in my personal opinion.
You can say the same thing about Metroid.
A lot of 2D stuff, the transition to 3D is really difficult. You've changed a lot of things. Look what's happened to Metroid recently.
So true.
I haven't played that Metroid franchise.
Okay.
I'm gonna die in a second.
I like the old Metroid. I like the old Metroid. I hated the new one. I hate the Metroid.
Yeah, the only
it.
Metroid games I've ever played were one 3D one for the DS briefly, and the original Metroid.
Everyone needs to play Super Metroid. If you love Castlevania, everyone cares.
Well, Super Metroid was the thing for how to do the I'm going to wander all over this map and go back and forth game.
I got
Super
stuck in
Metroid was the gateway to Symphony Night, really.
Yeah, for sure.
Hence the name Metroidvania, right?
Exactly.
Exactly. So I feel like as a Castlevania fan, I'm missing out so much. I'm not playing Metroid, but I will get around to it eventually.
Don't worry, Mr.
Until recently, I've been a Castlevania fan for a long time, and the biggest debate between fans was, arcade style or Metroidvania, and now you have the 3D argument, since there's finally something where people aren't completely saying it's the worst thing ever with Lords of Shadow.
Right. Maybe
so I'm interested in, just it's starting to gain traction, and there's fans of 3D Castlevania now, which, you know, 5 years ago, I don't think there were a lot of people who said, yeah, I love 3D Castlevania games.
Yeah, they're kind of looked down on it a little bit. One thing I would like to see is another, because Dracula X, PSP, the remake was 3D graphics in a 2D environment. And just like another PSP game that slips my mind, but that was really interesting to see, and I love that stuff.
Your fandom of Mega Man.
Yeah, Mega Man Powered Up. Yeah.
Powered Up and Maverick Hunter X.
Yes, those were 3D graphics in a 2D environment. I would love to see a Castlevania game done in another one, like a console or something done in that way.
Was it Super Mario DS or something?
Yeah, New Super Mario Brothers DS, and the one that came out on Wii was 3D graphics in a 2D environment.
It's shown that people will buy, you know, 2D side scrollers still. I mean, the new Super Mario Brothers Wii was a highly selling title.
Right.
So it's not like the market isn't there, so I don't know why Konami's not taking the chance on that.
Well, like I said earlier, if anyone's played Shadow Complex, it is Metroidvania, and just like that, Dracula X Chronicles. I mean, you have a gun, which makes it a little different, but it is a perfect example of how, you know, a high quality, you know, modern day console 2D Castlevania could work, and I'm amazed at that Konami has taken.
And also, if you look at the sales for the Symphony of the Night ports for Xbox Live Arcade, it's one of their top-selling arcade titles. So they're people who will pay you the money.
It's one of the top selling on the PlayStation Network too.
Yeah, but you know, PlayStation Network, you can't connect to that. So.
Wait another year, guys. And then it'll go down again, half download, or in the middle of your download of Symphony of the Night. So, anyways, as I said, totally should pick up Dracula X for PSP, because then you don't have to go through
Dracula X for PSP is also great because you finally get the story that leads into Symphony of the Night.
Yeah.
And they include the original straight up sprite 2D version of it, which is a blast to play just because I love the old music style that they use over the rearranged version that they have when you play the 2.5. And it's hilarious because Maria is such a joke character, but so overpowers Richter in actual gameplay. It's like, I'm going to shoot animals at you, and for some reason that hurts more than a whip.
Yeah. Richter was really derpy in that game. As I mentioned earlier, and imitated him, unfortunately. He's so derpy and not strong at all. And he's difficult to play. And it is more challenging, but it's like, after some points you're like, okay, I followed down that hole 5 times because of that fucking bat. Okay, look at Maria now.
And then there's holes you have to fall into.
Oh yes, oh my god.
I really liked the design that they had for that, since they were going with, you know, it was the last game in the classical style Castlevania, but you had these branches each level where you went into the regular or the prime version. And it was too bad we didn't get anything that expanded more on that later, since it was just pure Metroidvania after that for our 2D games.
I'm thinking, let's see, and I'm probably blasphemous, but when I was playing Words of Shadow, I was like, am I playing Shadows of Colossus?
Yeah.
Oh really?
Yeah,
are very much cribbed from that.
There's only 3 of them, but I mean, it is like, yeah, they're not even trying to hide it, you know?
And also, like, I don't know, maybe it's because also when I saw the Kojima emblem up top, I was like, when it starts up, I was like, am I gonna have to start doing sneaking missions now?
Yeah. The funny thing, the really funny thing about Kojima.
You got to fight Metal Gear.
Yeah. The really funny thing about Kojima, well, first of all, I appreciate him in Lords of Shadow because if you see the original designs for Gabriel, he looks like a G.I. Joe, right? So I'm happy he at least made him look a little more like a Belmont.
What was it? You can also actually be a snake in Lords of Shadow from what I hear.
Oh, I think there was a rumor before it came out, but I don't know if that ever.
I think it was like on GameFAQs that they actually say you can actually get the solid eye.
But the funny story behind that is, from what I understand, of course.
So you're saying which one?
Imagine that Metal Gear Solid Castlevania.
Yeah. Okay.
I want Big Boss. I want Big
You have to
Boss.
sneak into Dracula's castle. It would be kind of like on that level in Final Fantasy VII, where you sneak into the Shiver building, and you have to go like, and there's the guards.
Oh god.
Imagine if you had to avoid animals seeing you. It'd be like a Splinter Cell or Metal Gear crossed with Castlevania. That would be cool.
Then Medusa head comes out of the wall.
Actually, fuck you. Medusa head see you every time.
How many people here have played the NES Castlevanias? How
That's
many
really
of you really liked number 3? How many of you have played the Japanese version of number 3? Okay, for those who don't know, there was a big change in the gameplay when they brought it over to the US on multiple levels. For one thing, in the game, it's in the US, the further you go, the more damage you take from enemies. In Japan, it's each enemy has a different amount of damage it does to you. So there's a more interesting curve for the damage than just, okay, I'm in the last part of Dracula's castle, the tiniest thing takes off, you know, half of my health. Also, Grant plays completely differently in the Japanese version. You always are able to throw knives. It doesn't use hearts, you just throw knives as your regular weapon as Grant in the Japanese version. And also the soundtrack is a bit different because on the Famicom, they had extra sound hardware that was not in the NES. So there's actually a more robust soundtrack. There's a lot of good ROMs out there that have a translated version of that game. And it's an interesting experience playing it again with a lot of the mechanics being different.
Were you saying, so is it harder than the...
Actually, it's easier.
Right, which is common, I guess, for that kind of thing.
Well, most things, you know, the US version is always the easy, dumbed-down version.
I know. It's like I played Super Mario 3 in the American and the Japanese versions. In the Japanese version, you take one hit when you're let's see, Raccoon Mario, and you go all the way back down to Tiny Mario.